The baited hook. The Sunken Promise drifted like a carcass on the tide, its hull pockmarked with old wounds, its engines running low and ragged, pulsing weakly against the void. To the hunter's eye, it was ripe for the kill. A broken vessel limping toward oblivion, its crew surely desperate, panicked, vulnerable, and the hunters were coming. From the darkness, the raiders approached, Drukhari strikecraft gliding through the void with predatory grace. Their hulls were black as knives, their forms rippling with unnatural speed. They moved without sound, only the shifting glint of distant starlight betraying their presence. Their voxlink crackled with amusement. "A lonely little beast dying in the deep," purred one of the Kabbalite warriors, his voice laced with sadistic pleasure. Another responded, her tone sharper, eager. "This should be entertaining, let's see what it's hiding." The ship shuddered as the first boarding craft latched on, cutting through the freighter's scarred hull with surgical precision. With a hiss of escaping air, the breach was complete. Barbed figures slid inside, their armor sleek and segmented, their movements impossibly graceful. Kabbalite warriors fanned out, weapons at the ready, expecting the sweet scent of fear, the trembling cries of terrified humans. Instead, they were met with silence. The lead warrior, Valith, paused, his dark visor sweeping the dimly lit corridor. The air was stale, the emergency lumens flickering, a dying ship, a helpless crew, and yet something was wrong. No scrambling feet, no whispers of panic, nothing. Valith turned, gesturing to one of his subordinates. "Scout ahead." The younger warrior nodded and moved forward, reaching for the first sealed pressure door. With a flick of his wrist, he activated the panel, the mechanism's whirred, grinding with neglect. The door shuddered, then began to part. A gap barely the width of a human hand opened, and something struck from the other side. A gauntleted fist the size of a man's head exploded through the gap and caved in the Drukhari's skull with a wet, sickening crunch. His headless body crumpled, twitching as dark blood splattered the bulkhead. For a heartbeat, the squad froze, stunned, uncomprehending. Then the door slammed open the rest of the way, and they were among them. The corridor erupted in violence. A colossus of black ceramite burst through the breach, moving with terrifying speed for something so vast. Astartes, but not just any. These were Obsidian Spears. The lead warrior, Takahua, brought his fist down like a thunderclap, caving in another Drukhari's chest before the Xenos could even raise his blade. A second Obsidian Spear followed close behind, Tauhiri, his trident flashing in the dim light, skewering a shrieking Kabbalite against the bulkhead. He twisted the weapon, its barbed prongs tearing free in a spray of dark arterial blood. The Kabbalites reeled, but they were killers bred for slaughter. They recovered quickly, darting backward, lashing out with their wicked blades. But their speed was useless here. The Obsidian Spears had shaped the battlefield, trapping them in the freighter's cramped corridors, where every movement was restricted. The Astartes were unstoppable. Tauhiri tore a splinter rifle from a Drukhari's hands, snapping it in two before crushing the warrior's throat in his grip. Takahua turned as another Kabbalite vaulted from the walls, his dagger flashing toward the Marine's exposed helm. With brutal efficiency, Takahua caught the Xenos mid-air and slammed him into the bulkhead hard enough to leave a dent. The Drukhari twitched once, then went limp. More raiders tried to fall back to regroup, but they were too deep now, too far from their escape route, and the trap was still closing. In the heart of the slaughter, Kailanui stood like a monolith, his massive form casting deep shadows in the flickering emergency lights. In each of his armored fists, he held a struggling Drukhari, their slender frames utterly powerless against his grip. They kicked, cursed, and thrashed, but his hold was absolute. A third Xenos warrior lunged at him, blade flashing toward the seams of his armor. Kailanui did not move. Instead, he spat. The glob of venomous phlegm, thick and dark, struck the charging Drukhari directly in the face. The Xenos let out a choking, agonized shriek as the acidic toxin began its work. First, the delicate skin around the eyes began to bubble and blacken, then the flesh of the cheeks began to melt, the bone beneath showing through. He collapsed, clawing at his ruined face, his screams turning into wet gurgles before he finally went still. Kailanui exhaled, then tightened his grip. The Drukhari in his fists gurgled one last time before he crushed their spines like dry twigs. The surviving Drukhari turned and ran. They raced toward their breach point, their only hope of escaping the slaughter. But as they reached the hangar, the void answered. A thunderous boom rattled the ship as hidden weapon emplacements concealed along the Sunken Promise's hull activated. Lance batteries and macro cannons, their power reserves miraculously full, opened fire. Beams of incandescent energy and heavy shells tore through the Drukhari raider vessel, shredding its sleek form in a blinding display of destruction. Their escape was gone. "You have struck the reef." Tekahua, his trident still dripping, stepped forward. The last Drukhari warrior hissed in defiance and lunged, a final act of spite. Tekahua caught the blade in his bare hand. The Xenos' eyes widened. With a slow, crushing motion, the Astartes snapped the slender weapon in two. The Xenos tried to pull away, but Tekahua grabbed him by the throat. With a single final twist, the Drukhari's neck snapped like driftwood against the tide. The Obsidian Spears surveyed the carnage, their work done. Kailanui exhaled, his voice calm. Raiding parties should know better than to chase bait. Tauhiri kicked a dead Kabbalite aside, shaking the blood from his trident. Some fish are too foolish to learn. Tekahua said nothing, only watching the void through the open hangar doors, where the shattered remains of the boarding craft drifted in silence. His voice, when it came, was low and certain. Another storm weathered. The deep takes the unworthy. The Obsidian Spears turned, leaving the dead behind. The trap had been sprung. The hunt had ended, and the void was fed once more. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more.